Hello, class. I wanted to offer some commentary about the film Trail of Tears. I've been reading through your posts, and the discussion is going really, really well. Looks like about 40 of you have posted and responded to your classmates' posts. So, really impressed with the level of critical thinking. Um, it's been really exciting to see your reactions to the forced removal of the Cherokee. I guess I can talk about some of the things that stood out to me in the film. Obviously, the ethnic cleansing of Native Americans on the East Coast. I used to always wonder why there were so few Native Americans in the South, why there were so few Indian reservations, and um, of course, you all know the reason now is that Native Americans, in some cases, are forced to relocate in what they called Indian Country, Oklahoma. There are literally thousands of Indians who lived east of the Mississippi, excuse me, after forced removal. It's estimated that anywhere from 100,000 to maybe 150,000 Native Americans are removed from their homelands. And it's kind of a sad chapter in American history. I guess, something that we need to keep in mind is that technically speaking, Native Americans are not Americans. They are living next to the United States. In some cases, they're surrounded by Americans. And of course, Americans um, in the early 1800s are incredibly racist. There's an attitude that democracy, freedom, and liberty should be extended to men, white men specifically, but not to African Americans, African slaves, and certainly not Native Americans. Um, and so it was a different time. It was a different time. It does not excuse, by all means, does not excuse the bad behavior on the part of our government. Does not excuse the fact that the Supreme Court ruled in favor of the Cherokee and other Native American tribes. Those court rulings, by the way, still stand today. They're very, very important court cases. There's three of them involving the Cherokee that really do lay the groundwork for what we call Native American sovereignty, or just the idea that Native Americans are nations. And Chief Justice John Marshall basically states that much in his decisions, that Native Americans are not simply a community, but are in fact nations. And so those court cases are really, really important for Native Americans in maintaining their sovereignty and maintaining as much autonomy as possible. Let's see. Another thing that stood out to me in the film was Sequoyah, his ability to create a written language for the Cherokee people. I thought was really, really incredible. It's an amazing story. John Ross, the fact that he was only 1/8 Cherokee, he was mostly of European ancestry, which demonstrates once again that being a part of a Native American tribe, at least in the old days, wasn't about blood quantum. It wasn't about your ancestors per se. It was about your connection to a community. And so there were several Europeans who come here and they don't like life in the colonies, and they decide to pack up and move in with Native Americans, and they become members of the tribe. And so I thought that was interesting as well. Let's see here. Obviously, the trail that they walked, it's such a sad story, incredibly heartbreaking that these people would experience that type of treatment. I could understand at the end of the film the anger on the part of some of the Cherokee towards Major Ridge and his son, John Elias Bootnott, for signing the Treaty of New Echota. I totally got that. Made sense to me. Um, and it was just sad to see the Cherokee be so successful in terms of assimilating to at least some aspects of Western ways, but yet still be treated as second class citizens or people who were not up to European standards. And the only thing I could think of is just racism, and the idea that if you're European or if you're white, and you were to do all the things the Cherokee did, well, then you would be amazing. But if you are an Indian, it doesn't matter how lowly somebody is. If they're white, they're above you. And I guess I think about the quote in the film by, I think it was John Ridge, when he went to college and he marries a white woman, and the response to it. And I just thought his writings were right on point. Another thing that stood out is the fact that the Cherokee people owned slaves. I really was unaware growing up that some Native Americans did in fact own slaves. And I guess what I try to tell students is that this is not ubiquitous. It's not like Native Americans across North America practice slavery. It's just not the case. So keep that in mind. I don't want you guys thinking, oh, Native Americans were just as bad, as our early Americans in terms of owning people as property. There's a small number of Cherokee. In fact, most Native American groups welcomed in people of African descent. Some tribes, like your Seminole, were made up of people of African and European, and of course Native American background. So anyway, I guess the last point I want to make is just, keep up the good work, keep up the critical thinking. I know some of the content is difficult to, I guess, grapple with, and my advice to you, though, is, do your best to keep an open mind, and try to think about what the experience would be like if you went through it. That's what I try to do when I watch some of these documentaries, even though they're hard. Like, how would I feel if somebody moved me out of my home? How would I feel if I had lived in one place for a long, long time? My oral tradition, our ceremonies, our religion and way of life is all embedded in the landscape. Somebody came along, some newcomer came along and just drove us out. And I think if you do, you can kind of empathize with Native people and their experiences, and you could probably understand too why Native Americans have some of the social issues that they're faced with today. There was a lot of trauma experienced, and that trauma, of course, is passed on from generation to generation. And it just didn't stop with forced removal. You have Indian wars, forced removal, in some cases forced dependency, where tribes are just become solely dependent on the government, and that's never a good thing. So anyway, just keep up the good work. And like I said, I'm really enjoying reading your responses. I'm impressed with the level of work and the level of critical thinking. So I'm going to go ahead and sign off here, and keep up the good work.